Okay, so we just finished iconoclasm and talking about the destruction of art in the Byzantine. Now we're going to discuss some painting. Christian art was initially influenced by the qualities of classical art, and when we talk about classical art, we're talking about ancient Mediterranean. So I want you to think of the wall paintings. Think of Pompeii, and all the different styles, the 4 different styles of painting they had there, because really that's all we have left from ancient Mediterranean in the sense of painting. And so they were influenced, but you can see there's quite a difference here. Just initially looking at it, you can see there is no perspective. This is extremely flat, meaning there is no shading, or there's very little shading. I mean, there's a little bit of shading here on the clothes, especially. You can see the different values from a light to dark, and you see that. But there's no perspective, and there's very little value in the sense of facial structure. And everything looks really flat. We don't see the outline of their bodies at all, which was very common in ancient Mediterranean art. This is drapery, heavy drapery. So you can tell right away that's different. Also, we have this background, this gold background that we're not used to seeing. We're used to seeing in classical art, we're used to having a placement for, are we in the outside? Are we in a garden? Where are we? And this is just this gold heavenly space, which is what that's supposed to represent. It's not really supposed to be here on earth, but it's this weightless bodies, these pointed feet, that almost, I guess I can really only say heavenly space. And so you also see lots of symmetry when looking at Byzantine art, and you're no longer looking at contrapposto typically with your composition, is your body composition. It's usually standing with both feet flat, but they're not really flat on the ground, are they? They're sort of pointed, and they sort of look almost floating. So this is these are the things I want you to notice when you're looking at art in the Byzantine. Again, drapery, very, lots of folds, but we don't have, there's no body underneath these that we can tell. We don't see a bust line. We don't see, where the arm starts and ends. It's just a lot of heavy drapery. Also, this is when we begin to see halos. As you can see here, we have a very distinct halo here. There's no nudity in the Byzantine. It's considered debasing. And so you're moving away from that mythical, religious that we used to see in Greece, that we used to see in Rome, where there was lots of nude and it was beautiful, and, but this is pagan. That was pagan. This is not. This is Christian. The Christ child, if we see one, is typically a little man child. They look, it's a little child, but it's certainly not an infant baby, which is what we're used to seeing. He has a full maturity that we don't understand why he looks like a little man child. And again, I think it's supposed to suggest his wisdom, his majesty. Again, gold background. So, toward the end of the 1st century, a new method of transmitting imagery was developed, the codex. We learned about the codex and the Codex Borgia when we studied the Aztecs. And of course, they were much later than what we're talking about now. We're at 1100 for this particular text anyway. And the glorious illuminations, meaning the painted gold and the painted silver, these are jewel-like, the paintings and the way that they embellished them with the gold and the silver. Calligraphy literally means beautiful writing. So if you've taken photography, you know the word graphos or graphy is writing, and kalos just means beautiful, so beautiful writing. And this typically would have incorporated more than one artist. Usually you have a calligrapher who's doing all the calligraphy work first, and then you have an artist that comes in and does all the illumination with all the beautiful ornamentation, the paintings, and then also with the added illuminated gold and silver elements. So most manuscripts employed the use of gold or silver icons and mosaic type treatment. And obviously, the only people that would have been able to possess something as rich as this would have been very wealthy people. Libraries were temples of learning. And, most people were illiterate, so they didn't read. So the pictures were very important to their learning about the Bible's the stories and understanding what was happening, because they weren't able to read text. And keep in mind, most manuscripts would have been written in Latin, or of course, if they're in the Byzantine, there would have been Greek. So at this time, all manuscripts would have included images. They would have included the illustration, and they would also have included the text. And typically, the images would have been below the text. And these were made of vellum. If you did your homework, you know that vellum is calf skin, or they were made of parchment, which is made of lamb skin. And this was a much better surface for writing than papyrus, which is what we saw when we talked about the Egyptian cultures, which was much more brittle, but the vellum is a much stronger writing surface. But if you watch the videos, then you know how involved it is to get the skins to the position to where they can actually write and illuminate